Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by David Dieni, author of Drumming in All Directions. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. I'm glad to be here.
Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, man, let's roll.
All right, question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, for me, I think it's really important to identify all of the major books in your field of study, your interest, whatever that is. There's other people that have come before you, and we all stand on the shoulders of others. Identify those books, get them, read them, see how they struggled with communication, the subject. What did they focus on? What information they leave out? Because you're going to be doing your own take, your own spin on it, and you really got to know what's out there.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, it's like a step-by-step process. You have to answer questions. Do you want to write an ebook that you just publish yourself? Do you want to go a little bit further down the road and do print on demand that you're publishing yourself? Or do you want to do where I went is I was just ready to plunk down the money and to print my own book in the proper format, which for a music book is 9 by 12, so there is no print on demand options. 9 by 12, to get an editor, to make sure that it was right at the professional standard, to be willing to spend that money. And then, if you're going to go the route of publishing with a company, you have to decide, do you want them to publish it in-house, which means they'll pay for making the book, but you're only going to get, at least in my case, it's in the music world, you're going to get 10% royalties of wholesale. Or if you want more control over your book, you go the route of distribution, a distribution deal where the split would be 70% on my take for me and then 30% for the company. But the other big thing is that if you go the route of in-house publishing, you have to sign over your copyright to that company. If you go the route of distribution deal, you get to hold on to your copyright, which for me is everything in the world. To hold on to what, the owner, to own what it is that I work so hard to create. And then, okay, so yeah. Then, of course, that's just answering questions so you know where you want to go. Mm-hmm. But then, of course, you have to know people to be able to approach them. If you're going to go around the publishing, like for me, once I decided I was going to go the route of creating an actual print book at professional standard level, I found an editor just by searching on the internet, and she had a fantastic resume, worked with all the biggest companies in the business, and that was where I was. Okay, she's going to help me with this book. She's going to help me get it to the professional level. And lo and behold, because of her contacts, when she went to the biggest music marketing conference in the world every year, she took some of her favorite books that she's working on and presented them to the vice president of Hal Leonard. And mine was one of them. And he liked it and said they would take it for distribution.
And how was that journey?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How was that journey, working with them?
Well, what happens is, it's an ongoing journey. At that point, when we got the okay that they were going to be taking it as a distribution, then we were able to finish the book and get it ready. What you're doing is you're creating a print quality PDF file for the text, and then a separate one for the book cover. And then we sent it off to a printer that does a lot of business with Hal Leonard, and I had to print up 900 copies, of which I think 100 went to me, and they got all the rest.
And how much did that cost you?
Not cheap, my friend. Let's see, it was 910 copies is pretty much around $2,300, which includes the production of a proof for you to review, as well as all the postage and all the mailing. So roughly about $2,300.
And it did include the postage and the mailing with that? Did they send them to you in bulk, or did you send it to Hal Leonard?
Yeah. So what happens is the files are emailed by my editor to the printing company, or Versa Press,
Yeah.
and they set the presses up. They run off one copy. They send you the cover flat. It's not bent. It looks like a poster. They send you the cover, and they mock up with some tape a proof book, and they send it to you. And so you examine it and make sure everything's okay. And then they print up the books, and they send, X number to your publisher. And then what I said was, okay, I'll take 100, which is 2 boxes. 2 boxes of books for me, because of the size of my book, was 100.
So then what happened from that point?
Well, then it was like climbing over a mountain, and the only thing you ever want to do in your life is get to the top of that mountain. That's all you want to do. And then what happens when you get to the mountain? You see there's a whole nother landscape in front of you. And that's when I realized, it isn't about writing the book anymore. Now it's about marketing the book. Mm-hmm. Oh my, now I got to learn about that.
Well, and there's a reason I asked you that, because I knew that was going to transition into our next question. And that is to please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that worked well.
Well, I did all the low-hanging fruit stuff first. I redesigned my website. I paid money for that, to have my website redesigned so I could have a store on it, feature the book. I knew I was going to do postings on Facebook and LinkedIn. I wrote some articles on LinkedIn. I would be doing some postings on Reddit. I would identify those groups. I learned about the author page on Amazon, which is wonderful, absolutely wonderful to have all those tools available for you. And then about Goodreads as well. Same kind of thing. What's amazing about the author page on Amazon and Goodreads is not hard for you to get in there and set it up the way you want. But really the most important thing, the hardest thing of all, was to write coherent marketing, a marketing one sheet, basically. I didn't know it was a one sheet back in the day when I was starting it out. But you have to answer, and this is what I discovered in the process, because I didn't read a book on it. You really have to tell people 3 things when you're marketing your product. You have to tell them, this is what my book is. Then you have to say, this is why my book is different than all the other books already out there on this same subject. And then you have to say, hey, this is why you need my book and why you need to run out and buy it. 3 questions that I realized I had to present and answer all on one sheet of paper. And I finally did that. I've been writing marketing stuff over and over again throughout the whole year, and it's the most joyless experience, I have to tell you. But then when Hudson Music was about to put the book up as an ebook, it was like, hey, guess what? We need some marketing info. And I'm like, damn it. So I went back to the drawing board and and I figured it out. 1 page, 3 questions, asked and answered.
And to review those 3 questions: 1, what my book is about. What is
your book? What is your book? Yeah.
Yeah. Number 2, why is it different? And 3, why you should buy it.
Exactly. Now, I haven't read any books to tell me how to do this. I just sort of came up upon it. I'm thinking about all the late night infomercials we've seen, right?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much the schematic of every one of them. So I think you got to do that. And if you're like me, you'll find writing about the book like that is very hard. But you know what? It's kind of funny. The more you do it, the better it gets. And the better your writing gets, that means the shorter and more concise it gets. So it's not fun, but it's something we all have to do, and you get better at it.
Well, and the more books you do, it's like riding a bike. You just brought me back to about 4 years ago when I wrote my first book, and I know we were talking about this a little bit before the show, but I had the book done, had the draft, and I had to figure out, okay, now I need an editor, and now I need to find a book cover designer. But I also realized I needed to spend half the time learning everything I could about publishing, but the other half of the time needed to learn everything I could about marketing, because realized how important it's going to be to have the best of both worlds. And without dedicating half my time to marketing, there's no way that book would have become my first of now 13 bestsellers, because you have to dedicate yourself to learning as much about marketing as possible. And hey, I was watching infomercials at 2 a.m. because I was usually by that time wrapping up what I was learning that day. So usually what was on was an infomercial, and I would watch some of their different techniques. Act now, limited time offer, buy it today. don't miss
Yeah.
out. All those different techniques, but integrating those into the marketing plan without it becoming too salesy. So there's always that really delicate balance where you wanted it to be content marketing, but you also didn't want to be hitting people over the head. And then you also had to realize, okay, this is not about me. This book is not about my story. It is telling people how they can learn from this story and what is in it for them. Because that's what most people want to know. What is in it for me? What am I going to learn from this book? How is it going to help me in my everyday life? And once you get that, it's like a little bulb goes off. And once you market with that approach, it's going to make it a lot easier to sell your books.
Yeah, you just made me think of something early in the process when you're trying to promote your book. You're realizing, oh man, I don't want to be on the nose. That's, I think, what you were talking about. On the nose, always posting, buy my book, buy my book.
Yeah.
You want to give something. So that's why I wrote some articles. I wrote one article on LinkedIn. I'm getting ready to update that, but I wrote one article on LinkedIn about coordination. Why is coordination so difficult for many drummers? And then I actually presented real information that led up to my book. You know what I mean? So it's not on-the-nose marketing. It's giving people something to think about. And that has been what I've been working on really the last several months, is how to promote, not being on the nose. And also, I think many of us, me, you end up sort of putting your horse behind your cart. See, when you were writing your book, you were studying marketing. Not me. I was just writing the book. So so I had my horse behind the cart. I'm trying to get in front of it now.
Well, and it's a process. And one of the main things is you have to run your book like a business. And if you don't do that, then you're right. It is a lot of catch up. It's a lot of making up for lost time because you only get one chance to really make a first impression. But the nice thing is, if things don't work out, wait a few months later, you create a second edition of the book. You roll it out like a brand new launch. So there's ways that you can make up for that gap if something does happen. But you're right. You want to give great content and then at the very end, have that call to action. I'll give you an example. Our podcast, it is pitch free. We have an intro where we give an invitation to go to our website to get more information about our services. But that's it. Once we get on with the show, we're straight into it. At the very end of the show, there's a call to action to invite people to get more information about our Get Published business book. But it's at the end once the actual show is done. That way, when we're actually doing this together, it is all about you and all about our listeners, because that's what's important. If you want to have calls to action in front and back, that's fine. That is the best way to do it in a non-salesy way. It's the same way when you're contributing articles for newspapers or for magazines. Give that great quality and then invite them to go, hey, if you want to get more information, go to our site. Go get some more info to find out more about our services if it's going to help you. And I think that's the biggest thing. You have to say, hey, if this is going to help you, if it's going to benefit you, then yeah, definitely check out our information. But hey, if you got everything you needed here, wonderful.
And the other thing I realized by just looking at all the other folks out there marketing online, social media online, is that you have to cut through all of the chatter and the noise, and people do that by being confrontational. So there'll be one sentence that will be, why your coordination sucks on the drum set. Maybe I wouldn't use such a negative word, but just trying to pull something out of the air. There's sort of a confrontational tone to a headline that you're looking at, and you're like, oh, really? And that's going to motivate you to go to that link and read what they're talking about. So that's the other thing I'm working on right now, too.
You ready for the hard questions?
Yeah.
I always joke around, I guess, on this one, because our fourth question, this is typically the hardest question, and that is, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, I'm going to parry that a little bit and tell you that I don't have a favorite book. I'm a drummer. I'm a musician. What I have is a vast library of drum and music books that are of the utmost importance to me for teaching and for practicing, but they present the standard that I have to rise to. They present the model. So there are many, you can take a subject like drum set and break it down into so many different subcategories, and I already mentioned my book is about coordination. So I've got a lot of books on coordination. And like I said, everybody out there who wants to write a book really needs to learn what are the books already out there on your subject. Study them. Because one of the most important things is, you're communicating to people. How do you organize your information? How do you curate it? You actually have to leave a lot of stuff out. You can't just put everything in the book. There are things you got to leave out. You have to focus. You have to put a magnifying glass on some things. And that takes a lot of brain power. That really does. And that's when I say what's my most important book, it's all of them. All of these great books that have survived the decades that like I said earlier, it's the shoulders that I stand on. I can look at them and see how they attacked that particular subject, what they left out. And, one of the things I did some years ago, the number one selling book on the planet for drum technique is called Stick Control, and it came out, I believe, in 1936. It's still with us. It's that valuable. But it is kind of showing its age. And what I did was I just came across it in a bookstore by accident one day, and I thought, oh, good, I can use another copy, like I already have 12. So I bought it, and then I opened it up, and I just had this desire to analyze it, to actually look at all of the musical patterns and permutations and to study how it was made. I don't know why I wanted to do that, but I did. I broke the whole book down. I totally understood how he created it and put it together. And in the process, found his mistakes, his admissions, and probably some printing blunders that no one really realized. And it was a valuable experience for me.
So I think we're going to use that book as the example.
Yeah, fine.
I like
Absolutely.
That. I just love the fact that the book came out in the 1930s and it's still relevant. That really does say something for the staying power of that book.
Yeah, and since that time, there are some more books in the 50s and 60s, and then of course it multiplies as we get into more of the modern time. The books that are considered classic must-haves.
Well, for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Well, I tend not to be the most quote-oriented person, but there is one quote right now that kind of amuses me. It's basically this: don't trip over what's behind you, move forward. And I like that quote because I'm old enough now to be distracted by what's behind me, to look behind me and to trip, to fall, to falter. And I need to be reminded, no, move forward, keep on moving forward.
David, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
I would say it's my website, which is daviddieni.com. You can also find me on Instagram as Dave Dieni.
David, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the
You're welcome.
best in your author journey ahead.
Yeah, really fun. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.